Hello everyone. We're going to take a look at how to create a good PowerPoint presentation and one that adheres to the guidelines. First, we want to take a look at, well, it's a short video. Transitions. If you use any transitions, use one transition for all slides. Don't have a different transition between each separate slide. Effects on text. If you use text effects, do not use over 3 different effects. And there are several available. Typewriter, for instance, makes it look like the information's being typed onto the slide. Animation. If you use any animation at all, keep it to a minimum. It's distracting to your audience. Your format, you want to keep it simple and professional. You want your audience focused on the information that you're presenting, not on the presentation itself. You are presenting important information. You're not displaying your skills in graphics, text effects, animation, etc. Now, to be sure your presentation looks professional, make sure all your slides adhere to that 7x7 rule. No more than 7 words per bullet point or line, and no more than 7 bullet points or lines on a slide. Otherwise, your information just looks crowded. Again, you want your slides to simply present the main ideas so that they can be quickly read by your audience. You then use speaker notes to explain and discuss the information presented on the slide in detail. Most of your presentation of information will actually take place in your speaker notes. So think of your slides as a table of contents for the information you're talking about in the speaker notes. And make sure your speaker notes address all of the bullet points on the slide. You can think of your speaker notes as your transcript, what you're going to be saying as you present this. Let's talk about graphics. While you will notice in some assignment instructions, it is stated that the use of graphics is encouraged. That does not mean that you should always use a bunch of graphics. In a good business presentation, graphics are only used when they're necessary to illustrate a point made by a bullet point. Too many graphics make your slides look too busy. They're distracting to your audience. Again, you want your audience focused on the information you're presenting. If you do need to use a graphic, be sure you pay attention to the size of the graphic. Large graphics leave little room on the slide for necessary information. And they may actually obscure some of your text so that it's not readable, like the flower in the video. And be sure if you're using graphics that they're necessary to illustrate a bullet point, not just a decoration. Be sure that you do not include any graphics on a slide that are not relevant to the information you're presenting. Again, like the flower. Content. Again, in order to be sure your presentation looks professional, make sure all your slides adhere to the 7x7 rule. Otherwise, your information is simply too crowded. Again, you want your slides to simply present the main ideas so that your audience can read them quickly. Then you use speaker notes to explain and discuss the information. As I said, most of your presentation of information will actually take place in your speaker notes. So again, think of your slide as a table of contents and think of your speaker notes as your transcript. Be sure that your speaker notes address all of the bullet points on the slide. So remember that long sentences, graphics, multiple ideas on one slide, inconsistencies, unorganized information, or too much information can all be distracting to your audience. By inconsistencies, I'm talking about font, bullet styles, animations, graphics, all those things that we just covered. Fonts. Use familiar fonts. Times New Roman, Arial. I even like to use Georgia from time to time. It's easy to read. Stay away from the crazy fonts like Algerian or brush script. Remember, your audience in an actual presentation is going to be reading the slides from quite a distance away. So you will want to use easy to read fonts like those I just mentioned. Be sure that you use correct capitalization. The first word of each bullet point should be capitalized, but you should never use all caps in a presentation other than your title. This gives the impression that you're yelling at the audience, kind of like the titles in the video. Be sure to keep your fonts consistent. Color. You may not think color is very important. However, you want to use the correct color palette to achieve good contrast. This makes your information more readable. You'll use light and bright colors against a dark background. Use dark and bold colors against a light background. But stick with a simple palette and default colors. Again, you want your audience to be able to read the information on the slides. You're presenting information. You're not showcasing your design skills. Backgrounds. You want to be sure to use consistent background for your presentation. Don't have a different background or theme for each individual slide. Keep your background simple. Be very careful using patterns. Again, this can be very distracting to your audience, and it can make your bullet points really hard to read, as we saw in the video. Now, APA formatting. You treat a presentation like you would an essay paper. Your title slide should have your name, your title, and the name of the school on it. Your sources should be cited on your last slide, which should be entitled References. They should appear in proper APA format. Also, you should use a slightly smaller font on the references slide than you do on the other slides. Your sources should also be cited in the body of the presentation. They can be cited on the slide itself, but it's typically better to cite those in your speaker notes. Most of the time, you'll see the citations will be in the speaker notes, and you will use the same size font. Of course, this is not a live session, but if you do have questions on this, please feel free to shoot me an email and ask me. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you.